So when we speak of the uh, the software that we have, so there's one software that we're going to wind up today on. Uh, this is a desktop GIS application that is QGIS. One of the reasons that I wanted to give 1 month to each of the software that we are talking about is because it helps us get enough time to practice several functions given in that software or provided to the user in that software. There's something that is what we do with GIS software most of the time, and this is for people who are absolute beginners to GIS or are trying to get a hands on various functions of a GIS software, that it has this ability to process the files that you import in it. It is equivalent to how you open a picture in maybe Adobe Photoshop and you process it. So when you open a map in your GIS software, whatever software that it may be, for that matter, QGIS, you can perform certain operations on them. These operations are known as geo-processing operations or processing operations in general. Some are for vector, some are for raster. Now, when we say vector, we say that these are these lines that you draw on your screen, which represent a map. For that matter, I would like to add a vector layer. I could go into my maybe downloads where I had some vector maps previously. So I could maybe open one of the maps here. I mean, there's an SD shape file that I see here. I'll select add and I'll open it. Now these are what we refer to as vectors generally. These are like lines that look like very editable, and you can very easily manipulate them. So these are the vectors that we're talking about. And then you can also
Kazani. Karibu nafika form 4.
and then you can also add rasters.
Saludiane.
So when we say
Ni
rasters,
sawa.
when we say rasters, we have uh, images. So when we say images, maybe I'm going to find some here. In the data folder. Now this is one image, and all sorts of images in GIS are referred to as rasters. And wanting to be able to do something with them are the processing options or processing operations that we have available with our GIS software. So this is what we generally do. These are obviously in different parts of the world, so they're showing separately from each other. But you could probably have images or maps from the same area as well. Now, if I would like to do something with these maps or something with these vectors, I would then go into the geoprocessing options. Now, there are some that are directly available here. One is buffer, another is clip, convexer, difference, and several other as well. Uh, just give me 1 second, please. But when we speak of rasters, we have another set of operations available. Now, these are the two major or baseline set of operations that you can perform. Uh, yes, someone has a question, please. I'll allow mic for you. Is you saying something? Someone raise their hands. Okay. So, so what would really happen is there would be something that you could do with the raster images. In addition to that, there are these toolboxes. Now, when you go to these toolboxes, you actually get a lot of additional functionalities out of your software. Some of these functionalities are within the QGIS that you can use, uh, and some are actually imported from other software utilities. Like one is the one that we talk of a lot of is Grass GIS. And I mean, as you grow with your understanding of GIS and as you come across complex tasks to perform, you probably would be uh, able to do more. Uh, you can read about any of these functions and you can see what these functions do or if they are suited to what you're trying to do. Now, if I say vector, and type vector here, I'll get a list of my possible vector operations. That like vector is the lines that I showed you. So for that matter, if I would click on this particular one, it will show me in the description section what it is going to help me do. It is going to import my vector file into a database management system, which we know as PostgreSQL. As we go along the course, we are going to actually learn about how PostgreSQL works. If you would like to export contours or lines, if you would like to create histograms, if you would like to get the mean coordinates for a point, maybe you could do that as well. Uh, for that matter, let's say if I open my uh, for that matter, if I open my vector layer that I just opened a while ago and add it, and I say I want to calculate the mean coordinates and I want to actually use the weight field. I don't want to probably use it. I don't want to use unique ID either. So this option is going to give me, it's going to either create the fixed file, shape file, and the shape file for me, or it could save this information in a temporary layer. Usually, it's a better idea to save it. So I'll just mean coordinates. I'll type and I'll click save and I'll run. The moment I run it, it will do the mean coordinate analysis for me and it will compute a center point from my shape file. Now the center point is something that I wanted to probably know about. So this is my vector file and I wanted to know where the center would be. The next thing that I would want to know is what how much of area would be or what places in a map would be within 10 kilometers of the center line. So if I open this map, OpenStreetMap here, zoom to the more mean coordinate points, zoomed a little too much, I guess. And I would like to see how many glaciers are around the center area or how many maybe cities are within 10 kilometers of the center point. So what I could do is I could use maybe another function known as the buffer function. So what I'll do is I'll go into buffer. I'll mention a distance. Now there's a problem here that you see. The distance that it shows it can calculate is in degrees. One of the reasons for that is that my projection system or my coordinate reference system is not in UTM. So if it's not in UTM, that's going to probably cause me problems. So I try to see if I could change that. Here I am, and I could maybe use this one, but it's still not going to do that though. It won't work, and I cannot really do, but I'll just go with 10. So if I'll show you why you need to have that kind of coordinate reference system. So I click on buffer, it's going to be within 10 degrees. At 10 degrees is going to be too much, so I'll usually rather use 0.025 degrees, which is equivalent to about 17 kilometers at the equator. I'll just run it, and it created a buffer for me around the place that I was at. Now, if I make it transparent here, I will see what was within 10 kilometers, around 10 to 17 kilometers of the point. So I can calculate the distance that it created the buffer for. Since I did it in degrees, so it's about 2.4 kilometers because it's about 30 degrees north of the equator. So the distance is definitely reduced, but probably I was a little wrong with my mental calculation as well. But nevertheless, it did it for me within this area. I could have created a bigger buffer or far bigger for a far bigger in area. Sometimes you would like to assign a projection. So now this is important because sometimes your coordinate file uh, does not contain a projection system that is very much uh, good for actually calculating distances with. So I'll go with a WGS 84 43 degree north, and I'll select, and the unit is in meters. So the next time I'm going to I'll create a file, UTM shapefile. I'll save it. Now I'll have another file with a different coordinate system assigned to it. Now let's see what happens when I create a buffer around it. Now it's giving me the unit meters, and I wanted to do it like in kilometers, so I go with a 10 kilometers buffer. And I'll create a file and save it as buffer underscore 10 km. And I'll say save, and I'll run it. Mm. So it created a file for me. Yeah, it's not showing it. Oh, there you go. Now, since it's a different coordinate reference system, so it's not located at where I wanted it to be located, I'll remove my other layers from here. This is going to be something of a problem for people who are starting new, but what you could really do is you could simply go into uh, your project properties, and you can actually change your coordinate reference system. and generally it should be fine. Right now it has misplaced my point by quite a long distance. So I create a new project here, discard this point, and we open the same files that I just created. That should have not happened. But remember that whenever you're going to be working with distribution system, this is something that you're going to come across very, very often. Let me redo this again. Go again, add my file, clear this up, maybe create a new project, open my vectors, create a reprojected file of the same from the beginning. Let's see what happens. It should be this, but for some reason, or I could actually pick the Lambert conformal conic for my region. Then it's a good idea to be aware of which units are going to suit your area. So I go with WGS84 North. I'm creating a temporary layer and seeing what it does with it. So it has reprojected and it has placed it at the right place that I wanted it to be at. So that's a good thing. I mean, I will not have many more problems now, but it's very important to know that these kind of problems, when actually assigning projections or reprojecting files, happen uh, uh, very very commonly with most of us. So don't have to really get too worried. It's something that will happen uh, very often. So the next thing that we were doing were we were actually uh, creating the centroid, representing the centroid of geometries in an input layer. So I'll go with the projected file, and I could do it for every part. So if I do it for every part, so there'll be like so many issues with it. So what I could do is I could go in the setting part and I'll say do not filter for better performance. And I'll run. It did not filter anything and it created several centroid for me. And now I have a variety of points that I have, and I could then go ahead and create buffers for all of them maybe. So what I would do is I will create buffers for them. So I'll go into vectors, geoprocessing tool, create buffers, at about 10 kilometers for each one of them, and then create a separate layer with a lot of buffers in them. And then around each point that I had created, I have a buffer of about 10 kilometer. It could have been for one, it is for all. And the software is quite robust and capable of managing it for us. Previously, when we used to map manually, we had to do all of this by hand. And actually on a map, to do it by hand was quite a demanding task. So this is what it has done. I had a centroid here and a centroid here. And for each of these centroids, it has created a buffer at around 10 kilometer from it. So let us measure the distance. And this is 10 kilometers. I might not be measuring with a lot of precision, but you can pretty much understand that this is about the distance. My measurement can be incorrect, but it is obviously a correct 10-kilometer buffer that it created. At some point, I could probably want to uh, do some other things. For that matter, calculate points in a polygon. Now, this is one thing that I could do with it. So what I would do here is I would make this buffered layer editable. Once I make it editable, I select this. I select the feature, copy the feature, and I paste the feature as a new file. So I would say maybe file uh, sample something. And then I'm gonna make sure that it's in the same coordinate system. I'll click OK, and now I have a new file. Now I'll go for this feature which says count points in a polygon. And I'm going to click on this Geo-processing feature. And I'm going to select the layer which has centroids or points in it. And I'm going to want to know the number of points. So if I would like to want to do something else, maybe I can do it. I have picked the points file here. And I'm going to run it. Mm-mm. Mm. For some reason it's not click outside it, something happens. Let me do something first. Save the file as Androids. Maybe because it was in a temporary memory thing, so that why it was not able to do it. I'll go with the samples file now, and I click run. So it will create yet another file for me, which will tell me how many of the points, it should ideally tell me how many points are there. And when I click on this particular file, it gives me an attribute table where there is this number 2 given, which means that there are 2 points within this buffer of the file centroids. So if I go and make it transparent here, this is what I am going to find. I'm going to find that this particular file here has 2 points within it. And if I look at the attribute table by clicking right and open attribute table, I am going to find uh, these values here as well. This is the number of points. This can be useful maybe if you would like to maybe study or map the number of cities or the number of villages within 30 kilometers of a certain village, or the number of hospitals within a certain distance of your focus point or home. Or maybe it could be useful for something else, maybe how many patients of a certain disease you found in within 10 kilometers of an area. So if you had recorded those patients or that disease instances as points, you could probably then use this function. So this is something of the geoprocessing that you could do. You must have noticed that at many points I was not very clear. I was like, going about things and I could easily figure them out because coming back to the software after a long time and, doing these things might not be very hand easy. And if you're a first time user, even, you're going to realize that if you explore, uh, you can go to the toolboxes and check. And if you explore, you're going to find a variety of functions that you could work with and you could get info of. So this is something that is uh, is very useful with the geoprocessing tool sets that we have in QGIS. During the course of this course, obviously we do not have enough time to be actually checking every single geoprocessing tool, but that does not mean that you cannot do it on your own. If ever we plan to extend a course on geoprocessing functionalities of this software, that again will be obviously free. There'll be never any charges for any of the courses that we do. But one thing that's important is that you could probably take some time out and do some uh, exercises as such. So this is on the geoprocessing functionality of QGIS. Here, if you see at the glaciers or the maps of glaciers that we had, these glaciers were as polygons. They were like as set of complicated lines. And there's one glacier here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and there's so many of them. So if you want to represent them as centroids, that becomes far more easier. And if you can, I mean, you can then actually give the viewer an idea of how many there are. And now, since you can do the count as well, so I think it would be even further fascinating to use the geoprocessing tools. So what you could do is you could create a big circle around it, and you can count the total number of points inside it. And I mean, that could be a very interesting introduction to the geoprocessing functionalities of QGIS or any GIS software. With this, we are going to stop with QGIS. We will be coming back to QGIS in our following exercises, but now we will be shifting to another software